in that, a lot of times ivory towers are said not to have windows and not to be able to see out and touch. One thing about American Thinker that I think is interesting is here you again have a group of the intelligentsia. You have thinkers, people that are giving rational arguments to issues of the day, and yet it's accessible to everyone. When I look at academia, and I've done peer review writing and publishing and journal work, and all that's very wonderful and good. But there was a time for myself, Thomas, when I said, do I want to spend my entire life writing to a handful of academics in faraway lands that are going to read my stuff, and the rest of it will just sit on a shelf somewhere and collect dust unless, a handful of people look at it? Or do I want to write where my information will be read by, the heart and soul of this country, regular, everyday people from all walks of life? And that's a big challenge, dilemma that I had to face. And one thing about American Thinker is that people from everywhere, accessible to the internet, the worldwide now, can come in and they can look at these interesting articles and debate and think about these issues, and that's a very wonderful outlet to have.
Thank you. That's something that we actually work very hard on. I get lots and lots of manuscripts from academics, and some of them, unfortunately, are written as if the audience is going to be people who have to read it because they're fellow academics. That's what academic writing is like for the most part. You assume that your audience has no choice but to read what you've written there, because if you're reading the literature in the field, you have to read this journal article and that book. That's how it works in academia. But I always tell these writers that your reader on the internet has an infinite variety of options available a click or two away. So you have to win over your reader. You have to keep the reader interested, and you have to be clear. Now, we don't always succeed, but we strive to have very clearly written pieces that they may be of some artistic or literary merit, but most importantly, they have to be clear to anyone. And we do write, although some of us, like me, some of those involved in the site have a lot of academic background or academic degrees and so forth. Not everybody that writes for us is a college graduate. We look for clear thinking and for people who can write from the heart and write from the soul, and express things that resonate with anyone of clear mind. That's certainly the aspiration we have. And of course, as editor, it's my job to try to make sure that happens often enough.
You've got to weed out the chaff, and you have to make those decisions that what's going to get in and what's not going to get in. And that's another thing about American Thinker is it's not like you're publishing 200 articles a day and basically whatever comes is just passed on through. There is a culling out process that takes place, and that only a handful of articles are going to be put out at a time. And while folks can go to the archive sections at American Thinker at www.americanthinker.com, and you can still see what's been published, everything new that comes in is really appears to be selected carefully and within a small number so you can get your head around it. I think it's the only way you can actually go through and give justice to articles and going through them is if you keep a limited number at a time.
Thank you. We actually do hope to expand the amount of space we have for articles by starting new pages, but on specific subjects. That's kind of an ambition for the coming year. But we do try to publish only things that we're happy to publish.
Because I think the majority of American people are intelligent. They understand when they're being sold a bill of goods. I think the problem with the American people in general is that most people are not political animals.
Yep.
Most people don't live their life by their ticker tape or know the ins and outs of political bills. Right. And one of the things we do here with the Conscience of Kansas is we say, look, the American people have tremendous power, voting power of where they invest their dollar, when they're going to dial up and tell their representatives their approval or disapproval. And so if they become engaged and they become educated on the issues, then they can do a powerful lot of things. And
you're absolutely right, Paul. And I'd go even farther. I think the American people are smart and they make the right decision when they pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
But most of us, and God bless them, because most people can't be political junkies. They have their own lives to live, and
right.
Our founders gave us a system that is so good that for the most part people don't have to care that much about politics. At least historically that was true for much of the last half century, even three-quarters of a century, that you could be a Democrat, you could be a Republican, but the country wasn't going to go to hell based on the results of the last election.
Right.
And that may be changing. That's a controversial statement. I kind of think it has changed. But whether you believe that or not, the fact is that because people, for the most part, I would guess, well, during the run-up to the presidential election every 4 years, you probably get half of the American public, of the adults, paying attention to politics in a serious way, really looking for the news, paying attention, what did he say, what did he say, what did she say, engaged. And then it goes into hibernation for another 4 years, and I don't know, perhaps 20% of the population actually pays attention to politics. And of that, a certain percent are conservative, a certain percent are liberal, and a certain percent are just kind of sports fans for politics. And they may not be politically committed to either side, but they enjoy the game. So that's kind of the landscape that we work in. And American Thinker is, of course, we don't make any bones about it, we're conservatives. And we're mostly conservatives of the stripe that I'd say probably of the key people, the core people who write the most articles. Almost all of us were liberals when we were younger. Almost all of us kind of learned the hard lessons of life about human nature, and at one point or another, either an event sparked it, or just we grew up to the point where we said, hey, on the basis of what works, you got to be a conservative, because liberalism is founded on an erroneous, a beautiful assumption about human nature, but one that's completely erroneous, that human beings are basically good, and that if we can only get the right social arrangements in place, we'll be fine, and
yes.
you won't have to worry about ugly things like competition and profit and crime and checks and balances, that it'll all be better. It's a beautiful fantasy, and it's something that wealthy and insulated people can indulge in. This is why it's so popular on campus. If you're secure in your position, either as a professor or as a student, meaning you're secure while you're there, and what lies beyond graduation, that's a whole other world. But campus is a wonderful, secure place, and it's easy to dream utopian dreams.
Wonderful to talk to you, Thomas. Just a pleasure to meet you. And we want to make the Conscience of Kansas radio program an outlet, a resource for American Thinker. If you have something going on, you want to get out to the heartland of Kansas and beyond, and be sure to pass it on to us, because we would like to be a part of that. And do you have any parting thoughts or things you might want to share with folks before we sign off with you?
Well, just that I've actually been to Kansas, although not for a few decades. It's a lovely place. I'm a great believer in the American heartland. I'm from Minnesota myself, and the American society, I mean, in many, many ways, we're rooted. We're losing it rapidly, but we're rooted in rural society. So I'm very happy to be having a chance to be on the air there. It's good to know. Well,
and we're happy to have you on as well. What we do at the Conscience of Kansas, we bring the biggest names from all around the nation out, and we start in Kansas and then move across the country with the radio program. And it's been wonderful talking about your website and the work that you're doing. And people can find your website at www.americanthinker.com. You can also find it linked at our master website of superior conservative values at www.ibbetsonusa.com. We have American Thinker linked there as well for our listeners' convenience. And Thomas Lifson, we just again want to thank you for taking the time to be on the Conscience of Kansas radio program.
Thank you very much, Paul. It's been a pleasure.
All right. You have a wonderful day.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.